appreciate you joining us and making time in Senator Leahy's schedule to be with us this afternoon. I know there's a lot of things going on in Washington, as there usually are. And so we had our meeting last week in DC, where we usually have in-person visits with our congressional offices, but that wasn't in the cards for last week. So we're fortunate to be able to do this virtually today. And we're also fortunate to have with us on the line, although you can't see them all, people that are employees, leadership, and board members from credit unions from all corners of the state of Vermont. And so that's great that they're able to take time out of their days this afternoon to be with us. And I was hoping that some of them will share with you and with the senator some of the great things that they're doing for consumers and for businesses in the state of Vermont. But we were also hoping, and no doubt we will hear from the senator a little bit about, things on his plate and what are priorities or issues that he has concerns about and whatnot. And then we'll touch on some, more credit union specific issues as well. I think we've sent this information to you or others in your office before, but just to give you some perspective on the economic impact of credit unions in the state of Vermont last year. Credit unions in Vermont saved the people who do business with them about $43 million in better rates and fees than other financial service providers in the state. They issued about somewhere over 13,000 plus mortgages, did $662 million in auto loans, 109 million in commercial loans. That's separate from paycheck protection kind of loans and whatnot, and other SBA loans. And the sum total of all of that and the people that credit unions employ equates to about 4,300 jobs in the state of Vermont, for a total economic impact in Vermont of about $722 million a year. So we're really proud of the work that credit unions do in Vermont and how they've really come into the limelight, so to speak, in recent years, with more and more people and small businesses being attracted to them and drawn to them to rely on them for their financial services. So we think there's a real success story there. So that's, just thought I'd lay some landscape for you. There are three, I guess I'll call it housekeeping kinds of issues that I thought that I would run by you in the senator, and I think we may have shared these with you already. The housekeeping in that they are minor tweaks to the Federal Credit Union Act, so they're specific to federally chartered credit unions. And the first is just got introduced last week. So it hasn't hit the Senate yet. It's a Credit Union Board Modernization Act. It's in the House. It's 6689 in the House. And all that would allow credit unions who are required by federal law to have a meeting every month of their board of directors to have at no less than 6 meetings a year. So not a big issue, not a big deal. It's not controversial, but it would be helpful to credit unions to have that flexibility. And again, that's a House bill at the moment. The second one does have a Senate.
Just to clarify, is that you're currently required to have 12 meetings a year? Is that
yes.
Right? It would take it to 6. Okay, just to clarify.
Yeah. The second one, again, kind of like a housekeeping limited modification of the Federal Credit Union Act, is increasing loan maturity limits for federally chartered credit unions. There's a House version of the legislation, and there's companion legislation in the Senate, S762. And currently, federally chartered credit unions are limited when they're making non-mortgage related loans to a 15-year maximum maturity limit. And this proposal would extend it to 20 years. It's bipartisan, introduced by Republicans and Democrats, Senators Scott from South Carolina and Masto from Nevada. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, in this day and age, as loan amounts, for whatever purposes are getting higher, it makes sense that credit unions being able to go to a 20-year immunization instead of limited to a 15-year immunization. State laws, because we have credit unions in Vermont that are state chartered, and all but one state, I think it is, has a state charter option. And there are no state laws except for one that have any limit on that period of time for credit unions or that have that 15-year limitation, and no banks in the country have that limit at all, whether it's under state or federal law. So it's mostly a parity kind of issue for us. And lastly, there's also another one that's introduced in the House and companion legislation in the Senate, 1767, that is about branch safety and the ability to expel members from membership, which happens extremely rarely and almost never in my 4 decades of working with Vermont credit unions. But still, there are times when somebody is unruly to an extreme in a credit union lobby or branch, or maybe causes a loss to a credit union that gets shouldered by all the other members and whatnot. And there are times where it has come up in history across the country where a credit union may have cause to expel a member for good purpose. Today, that requires a vote of the entire membership in order to do that. And when credit unions were comprised of a few hundred people, that probably wasn't such a big deal. But today, when you have tens of thousands and more people that are members of a single credit union, that's a problem. So what it would do is move the vote from the membership to the board of directors with an appeal process also, so that that person could contest whatever that decision or that action was by that board of directors. So we'd encourage the senator's support on those 3 areas. And those are the housekeeping things. There are a few other things that we've talked to the senator about before that will come up in our conversation here, related to cannabis and business lending for credit unions. But those will come with some of the discussion that we have here. So is there anything from your perspective, Emily, that you want to provide to the 40 or so people on the line as far as perspective of what's on the senator's plate right now or what's hot and heavy today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk a little bit. And then, of course, if the senator joins in the middle of my discussion, hopefully he won't, but I will cede.
You'll defer to your boss.
Yeah,
yes, I understand.
Certainly defer to him. There are, I think, a couple things that are very first and foremost on his mind right now. Of course, the biggest one being finalizing negotiations at the moment for the fiscal year 2022 budget. He is very involved in that this week. As you all probably know, the continuing resolution that is currently funding the government does expire on Friday of this week. And I think he was just quoted in the news today saying that he is hopeful for a vote on Saturday of this week. So that I believe is where he is hoping that this will land. Of course, having aid for Ukraine and other sort of pressing issues is always, these things can come up at the very end of the process and require last minute negotiations. And so that is, something he's very involved in this week, and is very sort of continuing to try and finalize.
So if I can interrupt along those lines, Emily, I had a legislative briefing from our National Association yesterday, I think it was, and that came up saying that, federal funding expires technically at midnight on, is it Friday night or something like that? And that there's the usual, contention between parties and that kind of thing. But that the forecast was that there's no way that Congress is going to allow any interruption in government funding to happen with a war in Europe going on. And so, it may not be completely settled on for a complete fiscal year. The can may get kicked down the road a little bit, but that they were forecasting that, yes, Congress will certainly do something before midnight on Friday night. It may not be for a year, it may be for a few months, a few weeks, or whatever, but something will happen anyway.
Yeah, we certainly are not anticipating a government shutdown
Right.
of any kind this year. I think that I believe that we are still hopeful that the full year will be passed and there won't be a need for another continuing resolution. But, of course, a lot can happen between now and Friday. But
Right.
I would say we are anticipating a government shutdown by any means. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Are there any other, particular issues that you'd like me to speak on, or just sort of generally priorities for the senator?
If you, whatever, comes to mind, that's priorities that you see right now. And maybe Senator Leahy will join us while you're doing that. But if not, or after that, we can get into some credit union specifics.
Sure. Well, I don't want to steal any of his thunder on sort of priority issues. So why don't we go ahead and talk about specific issues for you all, and then we can make sure that we hear from him on that.
Certainly. So we have a number of credit union leaders on the line that are the chief executives of their institutions, and I know that they've got specific things that are near and dear to them. I don't know that I want to single anybody out, but if we can start, like we discussed before, Bob, you were talking about the great things your credit union is doing and what the needs are from a legislative perspective. So is it okay if we start with you?
Happy to. Good afternoon, Emily. Thank you very much for joining us. We know your time is busy. Appreciate you being here. My name is Bob Morgan. I'm Chief Executive Officer of North Country Federal Credit Union. We have about 63,000 members, and our field of membership includes the northern 10 counties of the state of Vermont. Joe had mentioned some of the great things that we're doing at North Country, and we are, but I'll speak more broadly for Vermont credit unions in general. In preparing for this, I was thinking back on the past 15 years. And what is really kind of remarkable is no matter what the environment we're in, just how well Vermont credit unions have pivoted and adapted to the needs of their members, which are Senator Leahy's constituents as well, time and time again, from the financial crisis to government shutdowns to COVID, spinning up new programs kind of out of nowhere to help members with all kinds of income disruptions. And the theme that I've heard from our members really over the past year is just how well we're present and there when a member or a Vermonter has a situation that's either a problem or an opportunity to make their lives better. They know that their Vermont credit unions are sort of trusted partners, and you can come in, kind of explain your situation, get outstanding advice to make your life better. And it's within that context that I think it's so important, whether it's the housekeeping items that Joe mentioned earlier, or things that we'll talk about here more with respect to member business lending and ability to one day, participate in stable coins and cryptocurrency, and really across the spectrum of financial services that we really advocate for as much flexibility as we possibly can to do that. And then a minimum kind of, John speaks eloquently about this, the need for us to be on parity with other financial institutions. That allows us an even greater ability to serve Vermonters well, and that benefits all of us.
Thank you, Bob. And John, I think your counterpart at North Country gave you a segue there.
He did. Thanks, Bob, for the introduction. Hi, Emily. Nice to see you again. John Dwyer with New England Federal. I think what Bob is referring to, and I'll just speak briefly about, is that the Federal Reserve has issued a paper on and is looking for feedback on a central bank digital currency. So the Federal Reserve has spoken for years about the types of digital currency that they may be involved in as a national currency, whether that's stable coins or a CBDC. Our goal is simply to ensure that as legislation is passed to allow for banks, credit unions, et cetera, the term is most commonly, federally insured financial institutions, as those capacities are added or brought to the Congress, we just want to make sure we have parity, that if a bank can provide those services to a member, we can as well. Because as we've talked about before, there are thousands of Vermonters who have chosen to do their banking with credit unions. any one of the people here on the screen, represent them. So we can't say this is a bill that we need support for, but we can say, as is the case in other topics, we just want to make sure that we have the same capacity that other institutions do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, as you say, I'm not currently aware of any, particular bill on this issue, but that's something that we can certainly be on the lookout for as any legislation is moving.
You can be assured we'll let you know if it's coming.
All right. I know you guys will. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it will be coming, I'm sure. It's popped up in a number of different states, mostly west of the Rockies or in the central part of the country. And I know by example, and specific to what John was referencing about parity, legislation was passed in Nebraska, I think it was last year, their last legislative session, allowing for cryptocurrencies and digital assets to be handled by financial institutions in the state. But for whatever reason, they left credit unions out of the picture, and now credit unions are going back, and legislators are wanting to include credit unions. But it's going back and fixing something that was an omission originally. And even though there's not a huge activity in it at the moment, I think every one of the credit unions on the line would attest to you that they're aware that members are increasingly touching digital assets or cryptocurrencies every day, one way or another. So we know that it's coming shortly in the face of credit unions and banks in Vermont. So we'll have to be prepared to do something to support it.
Hi, Emily. Rob Miller from VSCCU. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. One note on parity, and the parity desire is as much about ensuring broad access to those services amongst consumers as it is about creating parity between banks or credit unions. I would also tell you parity becomes really important when it comes to other non-depository institutions encroaching upon the banking industry generally that affects both banks and credit unions. So parity is a big topic that we could probably spend a lot more time talking about, but I wanted to raise those perspectives as well. The other thing that I would also tell you is that, along the lines of Bob's introduction, in many ways, we align our products and services in alignment with public policy in many ways, whether it's providing more financial access to households that are typically left behind. In our case at VSCCU, it's providing green lending and energy efficiency lending to our consumers, whether that's to enable renewable energy, solar on their rooftops, or whether it's energy improvements to their primary residence or otherwise. And another area is actually providing financial access, in our case, to cannabis related businesses. And that brings up my sort of, I don't know if it's a request, because I feel like I've made this request every year for the last 7 or 8 years, but the Safe Banking Act obviously would be helpful. I'll be clear, it doesn't really solve the underlying problem of the discrepancy between the federal and state laws, but what it does do is it helps mitigate some of the risk. And that would, I think, allow more financial institutions to participate in the market. It's going to be tough in Vermont because even in the legalized environment, it's still going to be a relatively small market and costly to serve, even with the Safe Banking Act. But certainly the Safe Banking Act would make it easier. And I'll pose a question to you is in terms of, I think the senator has expressed his support for that piece of legislation, but do you have any sense of whether that stands any chance of moving anytime soon, given its bipartisan support?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the senator is one of the co-sponsors of the Safe Banking Act. And so, as soon as that is up for consideration on the floor, of course, he is a supporter of it. I think that the delay on it right now is that, of course, it does have to go through the banking committee to get to the floor. And there, to be quite frank, don't seem to be many things that are clearing that committee at the moment, up to and including nominees that have otherwise, quite stellar records and bipartisan support. So That I believe is the holdup at the moment, unfortunately. So I'm sorry to be a pessimist on that, but I do want to give an honest answer.
Yes, it's a response I'm quite used to. Thank you.
I have a note to myself saying that the Safe Banking Act was passed by the House for like the 6th time in February, I think it was, as part of the America Competes Act. I don't know what the number is for that. But yes, it has been stalled in the Senate for a while now. And I think, as Rob pointed out, would go a long way towards making it more possible for more financial institutions to provide services to individuals and businesses related to cannabis. And I mentioned in an earlier call that, what concerns me now is that in Vermont, there are 33 states in the country that have legalization to some degree. And that's in the face of, federal law that still has it as an illegal substance, right? And in Vermont, sometime this fall, the first merchant storefronts are going to start opening their doors. And there's this assumption that because the sole institution that services the cannabis industry, albeit dispensaries so far in Vermont, is Rob's credit union, VSCCU, there's this assumption that VSCCU and other credit unions, will provide services to those merchant businesses. But the lack of a safe harbor provided by the Safe Banking Act really tampers that, among the hoops and hurdles and all of the extensive amount of additional work that folks in Rob's credit union have to do to handle what business they're doing already.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to cut you off. I need to, I'm getting a call from the senator's assistant, and I need to make sure that he's able to get on the.
Sure. I feel like I need some of that little game show music going on right now where the clock is ticking while we're all thinking about what our answer is going to be.
All right. Sorry about that. The senator is joining us right now. So
Excellent. Thank
apologies
you for that.
for the having to take the phone call.
And there he or somebody is connecting as Association of Vermont Credit Unions. So we'll just.
Hello, Senator.
Might not be fully connected yet.
Okay, is this coming through?
Yes, Senator, we can hear you.
We
Hello.
hear you. Good afternoon, Senator Leahy. We appreciate you joining us. I think he's muted. And I cannot unmute from here, Emily.
Let's see. Senator, I think you might be muted.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Thank you for joining us.
And we were negotiating until about 4 o'clock this morning. After doing it all weekend long, actually, this week, past weekend, the weekend before, and the weekend before that on the omnibus. And we got everything done except the last couple $100 billion, and with a B, and that's why I'm late. I whittled down 100 billion of that, and
So it's just the small details left to iron out.
yeah, just about another 100 or so billion to go. So I'll have to leave for that. But Joe, when you and I first started meeting on these things, it was a lot easier in the Congress because you had more grown-ups in both parties who wanted to get things done. Now you have too many people who want to figure what can they do to get a 2-minute bite on a social network or a cable news or something like that. And I remind them they have 6-year terms.
Hmm.
Now, to think in 6 years, I did have one say, but they can use a vote against us. I said, I've cast 17,000 votes, more votes than all but one person in the history of the country.
Wow.
I'm sure somebody can find something they didn't like in those votes, but I did what I thought was best for Vermont and the country. That's what, but anyway, tell me about you. How are you guys doing?
Well, we were just sharing with Emily some of the stories we got from credit unions, some of our issues that we've been talking about. I think most of them are things that we've spoken with you about before, so probably not news to you, although credit unions have been a good news story during the past 2 or so years of pandemic and before that, but continue to be, putting about $722 million into the Vermont economy last year alone, between the people they employ and the better rates and fees and so on and so forth. So credit unions are doing a great job, and they're growing by leaps and bounds in terms of the people, your constituents, and the small businesses that are looking to do business with them. And we were just talking about some of those things as you were connecting, and we're glad you were able to find time to connect. So thank you for that. Are there particular
I can tell
things?
You would have seen me being very anxious. I kept looking at my watch like, come on, boys and girls, wrap this damn thing up. I got a meeting to go to, and I will have to go back. But
Well, thank you for that.
I think the world of you folks, and I know one of the things you've talked about is the SAFE Banking Act, and
Yes.
I'm a co-sponsor of that.
Yes, we do. And we very much appreciate that. And we very much appreciate your counterparts in the Senate voting passage of it too, whether it's into standalone or whether it's tied to some other piece of legislation. We were just talking about that, how merchant storefront cannabis sales start in Vermont sometime later this year in the fall or something. And there's this expectation by many of those future business owners that, they'll go to their local credit union for their financial relationship. And without that Safe Banking Act or some version of it in place, it's not that no credit unions are going to provide services to them, but it's a disincentive when there's a risk, when federal law conflicts with state law.
Tell me about the Vermont State Employees Credit Union and New England Credit Union, the merger.
Well,
what does that mean?
Well, we have the CEOs of both of those on the line, coincidentally, and whatever I say would better come from them than me.
You want to go first, Rob?
Okay,
Yeah, I'm happy to.
That's fair enough. If anybody can, because I read things and I said blah 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 this and blah 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 that, and they all make sense, but some are different. And just as a Vermonter, say nothing as a senator, but as a Vermonter, I was just curious what it all means.
Yeah, Senator, this is Rob Miller. I'm president and CEO of the SECU, and the reason that John and I are working with our boards and our memberships to bring our two organizations together is, frankly, we believe that together we can actually provide more service, better service to Vermonters, our members, and the communities that we serve. And we've done that individually over the last, in our case, 75 years. We're celebrating our 75th year anniversary this year, and we believe that this is actually the opposite of what we've seen in many financial institution transactions over the last 10 years, where an out-of-state institution comes in and buys a Vermont institution and moves all the decision-making outside of Vermont. In this case, we are strengthening from within to better serve Vermonters. So we believe that this is a good step forward for Vermont and for Vermont's financial industry, and certainly for consumers and Vermonters throughout the state.
Thanks, Bob. Whereabouts are you right now?
I'm on vacation.
Okay, I was going to say we don't have leaves like that at my farmhouse in Middlesex, Vermont. We still got about a foot of snow on the front lawn.
It's warm enough that I'm trying not to show that I'm, I have a little sweat on my brow. So I'll try not to make you all jealous.
But it was 70 degrees a day or so ago in Washington, and they're predicting snow in 2 days. So, you know,
Oh,
who
there you go.
knows?
Yeah.
Senator, this is John Dwyer. Obviously,
Hey,
we
John.
go way back as well. You know, let me just add a couple of thoughts to what Rob said. You know, I think when we considered these, you know, this opportunity over the last few months, we really are proud of what both organizations have provided and what the industry provides to the state of Vermont. You know, we have many stories of individual members that we've made a difference to. Their financial lives, but also their overall, you know, the overall environment in Vermont. But just think about some of the products, the mortgage lending that both of us do, the green energy lending that Vermont State does, you know, our commitment to housing, you know, just the level of and then the frequency in which we help people in Vermont. It's kind of ironic that this week it got announced that People's United Bank is officially going to be purchased by M&T Bank, and they're going to be part of the 11th largest bank in the country. I think we make a big difference in Vermont. All the people on this call, you know, are the vast majority of Vermonters. You know, so I think our efforts with this merger are really to demonstrate to Vermont that it can be done and actually add to both employment, the community, members, and you know, we're going to prove that. It's something that we're going to work hard on over the next couple of years.
You know, John, it's interesting to talk about reaching out to people and all. You know, we live there in Middlesex, and a lot of times there's I call it a soup and sandwich place, but they also bake bread, the Red Hen Bakery in right downtown Middlesex. I love going there, and Marcel does, to get lunch. One, lunch is always good, but so many people will come in and just talk to it. Oh, by the way, we saw your cousin yesterday, or we were talking to your neighbor, or went to school with you, or something like that. But credit unions come up a lot. And I mean, some people have complaints about something that's happening, something about somebody else. They never have a complaint about credit unions. They'll say, you know, I was trying to do this, and I was getting all kinds of, and I went to my credit union. They helped out. Let me tell you where I am now. And you almost think like you guys had sent these people there to come in, but they just happen to be there. You know, sometimes they're people I know, or known since, you know most of my life. Other times somebody I've never met before, and they've only been in Vermont for a few years. But you folks always get such good comments from them. And I just mentioned this as a Vermonter. It makes me feel good.
We appreciate that. And I say we for everybody on the call, not to say by any means, this is something we all represent. So, you know, we do work hard at it. I think, you know, you may hear from members, we talked about, you know, a couple of quick stories. We talked last fall about our commitment to first-time home buyers, but just since we spoke in the fall, we've helped 30 member households buy their first home here in Vermont. And that help included over $150,000 where we paid their mortgage insurance. We have another 90 members that we're trying to help find their first home. Unfortunately, you know about affordable housing in Vermont. The CHT announcement this week is wonderful. We're looking forward to their work in Heinsberg. But those are the types of things we do, and we will continue to do as an industry.
But you know, you look at some of those first-time home buyers, and then they become part of the community. Long after you're retired, now their generations are going to be still having an effect. Yeah. I think the ability to own your own home. I remember we got married when I was in law school. We lived in apartments, and then when we bought our first home as a young lawyer in Burlington, and I remember walking over to a wall, and I had a picture, putting a nail in, hanging up a picture, and just the feeling I had, this is my home. I couldn't do that in an apartment. I couldn't do that in temporary housing. I can do it in my own home. And it makes a difference. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I just want you to know that's one of the reasons why as Joe knows, I've taken time always to try to meet with you.
As a sidebar, but it comes to mind when I'm listening to John talk about what they're doing for homeowners and your comments, Senator Leahy. With all the headlines we see these days about, the war going on in Eastern Europe and whatnot, I guess it's safe to call it a war. I'm reminded that there are credit unions in Ukraine too that are smaller on average than credit unions here, but they're doing the same kinds of things for their members at whatever scale it is there that Vermont credit unions do here. And credit unions nationwide in this country have been contributing to a fund to help support those credit unions in a time of need that have suffered physical and financial damage and challenges and whatnot. And it's not specific to this conversation and legislation in Congress or anything, but it does warrant mention.
Joe, it is so horrible when you watch what's happening there. I think that Putin is basically a war criminal, and so anyway, I just got handed a note. I'm going to have to go back into the negotiations. I keep us posted on things too about your data security and liability, because I think you're going to see attacks from Russia as a pushback. Certainly Ukraine is going to. And in Vermont, Norwich University has their cybersecurity unit. It's a good source. Champlain College does too in Burlington. When I was a state's attorney, I remember a couple of bank robbers I prosecuted. They showed up, had a gun, put the money in the bag and ran off. We caught him. One, because his demand note to put the money in the bag, he wrote on the back of one of his deposit slips. And when we moved in to arrest him, he had all the money on his couch and the gun. They arrested him. He said, and the old sergeant who was there said, "How'd you find me?" He said, "Because you're stupid." And he was. But the fact is today, you're the robber, whether it's a credit union or a bank or anything else, maybe 10,000 miles away at a computer screen. And it might not just be money. They might be trying to get the data that you have of your clients. So that's something I know you're working hard on, but if there are things you see in legislation, I'll make sure we know, because I'll be happy to help.
We certainly will, Senator, and credit unions and banks too have received notices of heightened alerts, for cybersecurity issues, both related and separate from what's going on in Eastern Europe. So they're all on the alert for those kinds of challenges that may occur. There are other things we could talk to you about, but I know that you've got to get back for a vote. So
Apologize.
no, that's fine. I guess we just want to, share with you that credit unions in Vermont and nationwide really are a success story. We're real proud that you've been a big supporter of credit unions for all of your time in the U.S. Senate. And we appreciate all the great work that you've done.
I got to tell you what I told that story about stopping the red hen. I could tell that story about being in going into Costco. Somebody came up there and talked to me about credit unions positively. And another time, Marcel and I are walking down the street in down one of the towns in Windham County, and somebody talking to us. People don't go out of their way to come up and praise some entity unless they really mean it. They don't do that. They might call up and say, "Hey, it's nice to see you here." how's the weather in Washington or something like that. But then when they come up and praise you, and while they're way to do it, you should all take a bow. And with that, I apologize. I'm going to bow out. Emily can answer any questions you have because you understand in the Senate, senators are merely constitutional impediments to the staff. They do all the work. We get all the glory. And she's good, as are you. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Take care.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for your service, Senator.
Thanks, Bill. It's good to be with you. And I look forward to seeing more of you back home. Marcel and I are looking forward to noon on January 3rd, when I can become a private citizen again.
Well deserved.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. And Emily, your boss just said, we all heard it, that you can answer any questions that we ask. So we want to know who's
No
going
matter
to
the topic, just any questions.
who's going to win the elections come November in terms of, so I forget what we were talking about, but I know that we were winding down a bit. But I did want to make sure we give Matt and Jean, I think, have some insights they might want to share with you about businesses that they've worked with. So we want to make sure to get that in too.
Yeah, hi Emily, how you doing? It's Matt Lewandowski. I'm from Heritage Family Credit Union, and I just wanted to, kind of talk about a little topic that we've talked about before, which is our business lending cap. And with for years we've started to bump up against it, but really with COVID, and all the PPP loans, we've gotten more businesses that have come to the credit union, and we are now probably about 24%. We have about 22 million left until we hit the cap, and we're really struggling because we have to manage that 22 million with our business members. We're getting so many new members that need loans that we need to participate out some loans just to make sure that we stay within that cap. And we're probably, as Jean pointed out earlier, probably about a year and a half away from hitting our cap. So it's getting to the point where we could use some assistance on moving that cap up.
I do remember that we talked about this issue the last time you were here in November. But please remind me, what is the source of that cap? Is it statutory or administrated agency regulation?
It's legislative, and it is a 12, and somebody help me out. Is it 12? I can never remember. It's 12 and a quarter or 12.5% of assets to which credit union is limited for business lending purposes. And it goes back originally, as folks on the line have heard me say before, originally there was no business lending cap on credit unions. And it was a legislative trade-off decades and decades ago when there was some challenge to field the membership of credit unions. At the time, there weren't many credit unions involved with business lending, and credit unions didn't have the big awareness among consumers and businesses that they do today. But so that cap is, was given as a trade-off sort of. But particularly since 2008, 2009, the mortgage meltdown, credit unions have become more popular with consumers and small businesses. I can't help but think that all the businesses looking for PPP loans also return to their credit unions looking for more traditional lending, some of them do, or for other business relationships. And so, business activities have become much more prominent in credit unions today than they were not too many years back.
Hi, Emily, this is Jean, and I'm just kind of supporting what Matt had to say and what Bob Morgan said a little bit earlier today. We're about $20 million away from our cap also, which is about a year away from hitting that cap, which means that we're not going to be able to offer lending to small businesses. And we got a lot more, sorry, I'm having trouble here. Excuse me. We have a lot more businesses that are borrowing now because they came in through COVID and the PPP loans. They were unable to get loans from their own larger banks. And we were able to serve them in the capacity that we had. And that's for all of us. And so we're seeing much more business lending. But with many of us coming up against that cap, it's going to be a problem.
Thank you for letting me know.
And I think, Emily, you'd find that the businesses on average that credit unions serve are smaller than the businesses that, the greater banking industry serves. And so once some credit unions like Jean's and Matt's get up to that cap and they have to turn that spigot off, who's going to suffer from that is going to be small businesses. It won't be, the big ones typically. So we're very cognizant of that.
Sorry to interrupt. Are the
go
loans that you have made through PPP included in the calculation of your lending cap?
No, those PPP loans have already been paid off.
Okay.
So they've been forgiven. So that we did, 24 million over the course of COVID, 600 loans. And we, like Jean said, we got a lot of new members, a lot of new business members because of that. And now, since their PPP loans are all taken care of, now they want some new loans, and that really creates an issue for us because, as I said, we need to really manage that and make sure when we're participating out when we need to. And the problem is other credit unions are in the same boat, so there's really it gets to where you can't participate out too many of those loans.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Is there any legislation that you're aware of at the moment that would help address this issue?
Oh, there's been legislation kicking around in Congress for many years now. Most recently in the House, there's HR 5189 that updates the Federal Credit Union Act that would lift that MBL cap. And there are some other measures and some piggybacking on some other pieces of legislation that touch on it too. And we can share some bill numbers with you after this call.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Great.
Please do. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to weigh in and share anything with Emily? Any comments, any thoughts that we haven't touched on that we should? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Emily. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to speak with all of you. And, I know, Joe, you have my contact information, and please, anybody, please feel free to be in touch if there are issues that you have or any questions that come up.
Please share our appreciation once again with the Senator.
I certainly will.
He's done a great job for Vermonters in the Senate. And thank you for joining us this afternoon.